everyone, and welcome to another episode of inspirED. I'm Sarah Loudon from Total Health Conferencing, and tonight we have a very special program where we're going to be talking about wellness. And, you know, at this time during COVID-19, wellness is really all the craze. You know, how do we take care of ourselves mentally, physically? People talk about the COVID-15. I definitely have put on that COVID-15. We're concerned about our kids, you know, back to school. What does the loss of socialization mean to them? And our guest tonight is going to both talk in generalities where she can, and also focus on wellness for people going through the journey with or beyond cancer, which is so important because this particular group of people, in collaboration with what they're going through from the treatment side, really need to spend extra time focusing on how do they create an environment in their own mind, body, and soul that makes them prepared to be able to take on all of the things that they'll encounter during their journey. So I'm joined by Sami Mansfield, the founder of Cancer Wellness for Life. Sami, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me, Sarah.
And I want to get right into it. If you could kind of give us the story of how you founded and how it came about, Cancer Wellness for Life as an organization.
Sure. So actually the cancer exercise, my career started a little over 17 years ago. I was new to Kansas City, and I was actually working in a large fitness center because I wanted to be in the fitness space, and there wasn't a lot of space in fitness that really interested me. And I met a woman who was a cancer survivor a couple of years out of diagnosis. And she had like the laundry list of all of the things that cancer affected. Like she had lymphedema, she had breast reconstruction issues, she had depression and anxiety, and she was having like GERD and all of these things. And in 2003, there wasn't really clinical evidence on the role of exercise in cancer. So there wasn't like a Google search. You know, I remember when she was telling me about her lymphedema and other things, I was just writing things down. But I really felt like her last question to me posed where my heart needed to be, which was, could you help me? And I really believed exercise could. So fast forward, I started off, you know, in the community, more on the front lines. And then I moved into the healthcare space about 10 years ago, which really started the evolution of our company now, where we already know clinical oncology is really strong. And we put wellness into a clinical oncology space. So that's how our company has evolved just in the last, 10 years.
I think that that's kind of so amazing that, as you were going along your own career path, you encounter this person who kind of opens your eyes to that there's a real need, a gap in, and having her as a test case who sounds like she had so much that you could create interventions for, really probably allowed you to see it so holistically. So what do programs look like? Who's your typical partner? Do you do individual health programs? How does that work?
Yeah, we're kind of an interesting group. Like our love is fitness. Like there's nothing more empowering of watching someone who is really lacking a lot of physical and emotional confidence walk into a fitness space, and it changes their entire trajectory of their day. Like I tell everybody, like, I know everybody asks about nutrition, but you really don't get endorphins from eating broccoli or kale. You know what I mean? Like you get endorphins from like moving. And so it's funny because people are like, oh, exercise. But when they start to move, those endorphins happen naturally, like that dopamine brain response. So we work on the front lines, but what we realized is if we're going to work on the front lines, we have to start at the beginning. And so I want a provider, like a medical doctor or a nurse that's sitting with a patient who's terrified to realize there is something they can do. And so we educate and just support a lot of the medical side. I think that's where really the bang for your buck is as a consulting company, because if we're working with programs that see 4,000 to 5,000 new patients a year, we're helping all of those folks. It's just a bigger reach, and it doesn't have to be just our brick and mortar space in Kansas City. It's how do we really change the trajectory around the world, really? So we do both. I say my passion is definitely seeing the people, but I love talking to medical providers because they get it. they just don't know how to do it. Just like I don't know how to prescribe a chemo regimen. Like I
Mhm.
kind of know, but it's a really good partnership. And I think it's
Mhm.
really changing how we care for people.
Well, I think it's also really complementary because as the doctor is focused on short-term cure, you go in and focus on long-term behavior that supports people beyond their treatment or their diagnostic journey, which, it's really hard. You look at just the way Americans are, the population statistics of
Yeah.
Americans and the way we behave too. So, all of these fad diets and so much kind of consumerism around. It takes you, years to put on the 50 pounds, but let's see how we can take it off in 30 days.
Right. Of
And,
course. Why
you
not?
get to day 15 and you're like, I just want a pizza. So you're not
Yeah.
really changing that core behavior. And I think when you are diagnosed with a chronic illness or, a terminal disease or something that really jolts you into like realizing, oh, you do only get one body. Like, I got to figure out how to take care of it.
Right.
So do you focus on both exercise and nutrition when you kind of teach doctors from a group perspective or work with individuals?
It kind of depends on the space, because in the hospital space, there's clinical dietitians that are really focused on acute needs. In more the survivorship as far as post-treatment or the side of like our gym space, we do a lot of nutrition because it becomes lifestyle just behavioral change. So, it's typically a partnership, but I am not going to, as an exercise professional, manage someone's nutrition needs if they're, on a feeding tube for head and neck cancer. Like, that's not my wheelhouse, but we work hand in hand. And I will reiterate, listen, like your protein needs that they're telling you are so significant to maintaining your muscle mass. So it really is multidisciplinary. But I think that acute versus long-term, like you said, most clinical dietitians in the cancer space don't know lifestyle change, behavioral change. They're doing acute management. So I think both are as important. You can't out exercise a terrible diet, and you can't eat perfect and not exercise. They've got to go together. They absolutely have to 100%.
Yeah, I think that's a great way that you said it too. You can't out exercise a bad diet. So many times we're focusing on what major media or mass media says about, diet being 90%. And so you almost feel like you could get away with not building a good exercise program. We interviewed Dr. Lily Shockney from Johns Hopkins, who, and she kind of left us with something really amazing where she said, if you really want to focus on having great health, find ways to laugh every day, find ways to kind of get all of those natural hormones inside us activating T cells. And I feel like exercise is that too, where, you're allowing your body to do what it was created to do. And you're empowering all of those natural fighting things to start kicking up. And for so many of us, myself included, the other priorities of life always silence that. And when you do get an opportunity to go for a long walk or, even eat for a couple of days really healthy, you're like, gosh, this feels so good. I don't know why I don't pursue this more. So I love that programs like yours, even in the title, it's like wellness for life, not for this moment, not for this season, but it's like, we're going to teach you how to incorporate these things to the point where it doesn't feel like work anymore.
Agreed.
Which I think it's really a special thing about the way you approach things. So what's ultimately your philosophy in making these recommendations to the different groups that you work with? I mean, do you start at the basics?
Yeah, the basic thing is every person affected by cancer, just like every other adult in the United States or really the world, should actually have the same exercise, physical activity recommendations. It's 150 minutes of moderate physical activity per week, which is 22 minutes per day, as an example. But here's the thing. And so, what's the difference of physical activity and exercise? And I always tell people, like, exercise has a plan, a purpose, a goal, an intention. There's a reason you're doing it. If you and I, Sarah, are going to get on, get in a van and we're going to go zip off to California for whatever reason, maybe not today during COVID, but let's say we are, we're not going to go drive up through New York City, across the Great Lakes, because if we want to get to California because that's where the beaches are, we're going to go. And I think people just sort of meander through this exercise without an intention. And they look for the perfect, my neighbor said I should do yoga, or I read this article. And so I always tell people, here's the foundation of what we know. We know that people that meet those recommendations have a 40% reduction of death from any cause. Diabetes, hypertension, any chronic disease. In cancer, that all-cause mortality improves even greater to 49%. And it's from a lot of reasons. We don't understand all of the scientific side of the etiology, but we know that those patients do better, they tolerate treatments better, they have a better mental health, etc. So one of the things to really think about is, guiding people through, here's the foundation, now what do you like to do? What do you want to accomplish? We did a big wellness project. One of the things that we also work in is pharma, and we did a wellness wheel for a pharmaceutical company. And my big finality of this wellness concept was, we need to talk to these patients about, what is your goal in life? Do you have a wedding you want to get to? Do you have a graduation? Do you want to live to see, a grandchild, get married? Like, what do you want? And if you put those two pieces together, you can find a path. I think that people really, it needs to be purposeful. It shouldn't just be what somebody said I should do. So I think education is huge, but I believe everyone wants two things in life. We want to live a long life, but we want to live a good life. And so the exercise and nutrition recommendations we make should fit those. And I tell people, don't skip chocolate if you like chocolate. That's a terrible idea. Maybe don't have it for breakfast, or, but my philosophy is, I really want people to understand the basics, but it should still fit them, because if not, they don't receive pleasure in doing it. If you don't want to water ski, don't water ski. No big deal. Off you go.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just very common sense. I have a practical question about that.
Yeah.
Is it at any time, meaning, if you're counseling someone who's in their late 20s, and then counseling someone who's in their mid 60s, is it at any time that you can kind of say, look, now's the time to start on this journey? Or do you pass a point where it's like, your body's settled into health habits and you can't reverse?
No, I mean, but here's the thing. In some ways, so when we pass the age of 30, I realize we're a tad past 30, but us as ladies past the age of 30, we start losing muscle mass. Okay. I can't go back and say, oh, I wish I would have, fortunately, I liked doing strength training early, not because I knew the literature, I enjoyed it. But if you're 60 and you've never done strength training, you're still going to get a benefit, right? And interestingly, I think we need to think about life in these sort of trajectory time points. A 20-year-old maybe won't be as committed because they're going to get onto the hot new thing. And I'm not trying to judge, a time point, but some of my 50 and 60-year-olds, they know what they want and they are more committed. They might have the time, they might have the resources, they might be able to hire a professional or go to a class during the day versus maybe somebody that's got little kids and parents to take care of. So I don't think that there's really a blanket recommendation there. I think that everybody, if they're motivated, I really believe if you want to exercise, you will make time. I mean, I will be found randomly. This happened in COVID. We downsized into an apartment 8 months ago because our son going to college, just went to college. And when COVID hit, I was like, I'm quarantined in 1,200 square feet. And so I would be finding myself, lunging around the kitchen island a couple of times, but you know what I mean? I just chose to.
Yeah.
It's convenient. We have 26 floors of stairs to climb. So off I go. It's you make a choice to do it. We got out and walked more. I had to learn to grocery shop online and not always touch my produce, but you figure it out. But it's the desire. And people just don't have the desire. And I'm like you, Sarah, I got one of these bodies and something could happen any day. I am going to do my best to take care of it inside and out. For sure.
It really does boil down to desire, but I mean, desire has to kind of at some point marry accountability. And, you know, I could wake up, I do wake up every Sunday morning and I'm like, okay, this is the Monday that I'm going to do this. And then, you know, Monday comes and something happens and it's just like, okay, I guess it'll be next week. But I do think that it's very much about, like, when you, like you said, you know, setting this intention, having the plan, the purpose, the goal, and setting the intention, because it can't just be one superficial thing that's kind of like, I could live without it. Because then you will live without it. You know, you're not gonna rearrange your life and your schedule unless it matters to you. So I love even too that that's the way you approach it. You say that you believe wellness is more than diet and exercise, and you kind of have these categorized. Spend some time telling us how you categorize them and why you think wellness is more than diet and exercise.
I mean, there's so many different ways that we feel whole. Like you talked about Lily Shockney's laughter. Like, I tell people all of the time, if you're having a bad day and you just can't get yourself off the couch, then I want you to get on your phone, or you probably already are, your tablet. I want you to pull up YouTube or Pinterest, and I want you to look up funny animal videos, because it's so simple to kind of, you'll smile and you'll get a little bit of those endorphins, and you're going to be more likely to get off the couch than if you're scrolling through Facebook going, oh my gosh, those people don't have nearly the problems that I do, or whatever that is. So I think that there's so many more categories. I mean, the wellness side is really interestingly still somewhat subjective. Wellness started back in it was really the 80s that we talked about the positive psychology side. And some people kind of are like, oh, you can't just be positive. But if you're in an environment where you feel like you're in control, sometimes you could take a bad day and still find a positive, right? Sure. So there's multiple categories of wellness. A lot of people, myself included, put it in like a wheel, because in general, if you think about, if you have one flat tire, you're going to kind of have that just flat spot in your day, in your life. And so there's a lot of different categories of wellness. The one that we think of the most is physical, which is nutrition and exercise, but it's really only one of, I usually use 7. So like social wellness is one. That could be social media. It could be who you connect with. Who do you spend time with? Who do you work with if you're still working? You know, who are the people that you engage with? Sometimes, you know, family is our social, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's our kids' community, sometimes it's ours. So that's a category. Intellectual wellness is a really interesting category, and you think about what you're doing and what your work does. Intellectual wellness is like looking for information, asking questions. Like, if you're curious about something, look it up. I mean, we have everything at our fingertips right now, and not always accepting that, you know, things just are the way they are because the media has portrayed them. I always tell people, like, why do you think the keto diet is so good? Do you know the science behind the keto diet? Is it just about eating bacon and butter, or is it about the carbohydrates and the insulin response? You know, things like that. So that's really your intellectual side of wellness. This is a great intellectual side of wellness, because somebody can come in and they're like, oh, that topic I want to learn, and I don't want to get lost in Google or YouTube or whatever. Environmental wellness is another one. That includes not only like our earth, but also, again, who's in your environment. There's sort of this saying that you're the average of your 5 closest people. Like, who do you spend your time with every day, and what's your personal environment look like? And I think that that's kind of an interesting thing. One of the best parts of where we live now, which is where I'm at right now, is we have all of these windows in this apartment, and the environment of having light every day, even in winter, and seeing the sunset is like worth, you know, living in 1,200 square feet. It's been such an amazing part of that environment, right? I cook, I look over, there's the sunset, it's great. Spiritual wellness is another one, which religion is a piece of this. But the other thing about spiritual wellness I love is kind of the antidote to cynicism, or just people that sort of, you know, you might smile at me and I'm not going to think a negative thought. I'm going to be like, oh, Sarah has a great smile, and, you know, just thank you for doing that, versus some people have that cynical attitude. So having spiritual wellness is also about just having good thoughts around other people and intentions. Occupational wellness is another one. That is, yes, your work. Is it fulfilling? If it's not fulfilling and it's a paycheck, where are you spending your other time? Can you volunteer? Can you give back for something purposeful? In the cancer world, it's interesting how many people start these nonprofit pieces because they want to do something purposeful about their cancer experience. And then the last one, but not least, and we've talked about this in the very beginning, is emotional wellness. And that's a really hard one with COVID and life. I just finished writing an article on resilience, and I just love like resiliency and grit and just that attitude of choice. And the fact that sometimes I'm really great about emotional wellness. Otherwise, I need to know who's my person. Sometimes it's my husband. Other times he just wants to fix it. So I'm going to go off and call my friend, you know? And so all of those categories are important. And some days I'm terrible at one and amazing at another. And other days I'm like, oh, I'm kind of doing okay. And just like, but you realize if you're short on one, you are going to feel it, but you may not know why. So I definitely encourage people just to kind of look that up and see where they are, for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, being able to look at it in that way gives you an awareness that, you know, these are almost the tanks that we have. And if you're thinking about, you know, oh, this is the way I'm feeling in this one way, well, check your tanks, you know, see if you do need a little bit more time with friends or your mom or, you know, whoever you have in your life that can kind of give you that encouragement. Or if you're at work, like check in with people. You know, so much of what we've learned through COVID, I think, is that connection was so underrated. And
100%.
you know, you were like, oh, I can't wait till Friday where I kind of clock out and then I have the weekend to myself. And it's like, that's not at all what was the ideal ever. I mean, I feel like if I could get with the worst people I ever worked with in my life and put them all in a room, I would want to hug all of them at this point.
Yeah.
But it is
then you talk about that.
I think it's interesting to look at it that way, where you're kind of moving around in those things. And what I noticed so much about how all these categories play together in your wellness wheel is outside of environment and diet and exercise, well, everything else is emotional. So it's like and to me, I feel like if you can get those emotions to balance with the physicals, because Sami, I don't know about you, but I know that maybe in the moment, if I overindulge or if I let myself kind of spend a weekend doing absolutely nothing, in that time I might feel good, but it just weighs on you. Because it's like thickness, you know, it's like, oh, I didn't want to do that. I regret it. And I do think that then it almost like puts the wrong kind of fuel in the other tanks, because you're not really, you know, looking at it holistically. And I love this. I actually wrote all of these down and I'm going to post it on the side of my computer. I think that those are good.
The thing that I always tell people is like, we also are busy. And so sometimes like I've learned, like, so I will laugh at myself and I don't know how I got into this, but like, I'm not a game player, but I would find myself going, I convinced myself that I needed downtime. So I downloaded these stupid games on my iPad that I really didn't like, that are constantly like, you know, giving you like a carrot. And I told myself, I was like, well, I really don't need to shop. I don't really need anything right now. So I download these games. And then I felt like I had to play my game to get like my coins of the day. Yeah. And so I have this good friend who we always have a goal of the day. And so one day I said, I'm going to delete all the games on my iPad. And her response was, okay, ? Why? And I'm like, because it's a waste of my time. So instead I found that I would rather go on Pinterest and look for new food recipes, which I know makes me hungry, but the kitchen's right here, you know, kind of stuff. And so I really had to almost like take a shift, and even doing it, I was like, oh, you know, I got so far. But I realized that I was wasting time and energy and emotional energy when the world needs good, positive, strength, forward thinking right now, or we're all going to be stuck in the same place in a year. And that's scarier to me than that change. So even in the wellness wheel, it's like, you have something bogging you down? Can it go by the wayside? Are there people that are in your environment that are bogging you down? And sometimes there are, and it's okay. It's totally okay.
But unless you know, unless you really can identify those categories and inventory them,
True.
you might not even know that it's that
No.
toxic relationship, or it's that inactivity, or, you know, it's that you wake up and binge eat in the night, like things that you are doing because it's routine or because it's kind of become accepted. Unless you survey these, you might not even know that piece that's really kind of powering you wrong. So I
Yeah.
really,
Agreed.
really love that. I think that for the listeners, that's such a big takeaway. And definitely when you're going through, I was diagnosed with a disease at the end of last year. Um, it resets so much of me. It was like, why am I racing at work? Why am I doing that? You know, like it, when you're diagnosed with something, it gives you that moment where you say, it's like a spring cleaning. I don't want to have that person in my life, or maybe I
Right.
want more of that person in my life, or whatever it is. But it's like this cleansing because you know that you're almost starting to number your days differently.
Yep.
Um, yeah,
Absolutely agree.
that's really fantastic. Okay, let's shift a little bit to kind of symptom management when it comes to cancer wellness.
Okay.
So we read cancer-related fatigue is the #1 most reported effect of cancer treatments. How
Right.
can some of the things that you prescribe or recommend in the wellness journey counter something as significant as fatigue?
Well, really, because the #1 reason that most of our patients have fatigue is purely based off deconditioning, just loss of muscle, loss of function. If you don't exercise for about 5 to 7 days, your muscles stop storing glycogen, which is like the fuel for your muscles. And the reason why is because when your body's fighting off cancer and trying to recover from, say, treatments or just medicines like pain medicines or nausea medicines, your body is so busy trying to do priority things that it's not going to do what's not important. It's going to self decide. And so what happens is a lot of people, they just stop storing that glycogen energy because their body doesn't need it. #1, if you have 30 days of bed rest, or like no activity, you lose 10% of your lean muscle. I don't care if you're 30 or you're 85. The difference is if you're 30 and you're fit, it's maybe not going to be as big of a deal. If you're 85 and you're already kind of under, just under muscular and deconditioned, it is going to rock your world. So the #1 thing that we really focus on is the fact that we're going to really change that deconditioning piece. A lot of medicines now are given steroids, or a lot of treatment pathways have steroids because of like anti-nauseas, or the new move to immunotherapy in the cancer world is phenomenal. But side effects are treated with steroids. Just boom, here's a dose of steroids. So all of that over time really causes that muscle loss, or that we call it sarcopenia. So the #1 thing that's easy is that it's deconditioning. The second thing that we really see with a lot of people is poor sleep and poor daily regimen, what I kind of call your daily schedule. Because all of a sudden you're like napping at 2, you don't have anything to stimulate your brain. Maybe you were going to work, now you're not, you're sitting in this chemo chair. And now most places you can't have like a guest. You don't have any engagement. And so a lot of people, even just their brain shuts down and they're in this weird space overall. So exercise and function produces endorphins. It creates that dopamine response, that kind of dulling the pain, which is physical and emotional, and builds conditioning. So now you can get out of a chair. Bingo. You can get up the stairs, those kinds of things. Some studies that have come out have compared the benefit of exercise against cognitive behavioral therapy or just psychosocial, and really was about the same for some types of fatigue that were related to anxiety, depression.
Wow.
But for a lot of people, accessing a therapist, the cost has not been really that easy. So I tell everybody, here's what I want you to do every day. I want you to get out of the chair 10 times. I want you to do 10 countertop push-ups or desktop push-ups or whatever before you brush your teeth, whatever that is. And then I just want you to stand with your feet together, squeeze your booty because that tightens your core. And I want you to try to count to 20. If you did that every day, you're using major muscles in your body. If you can reach overhead once, put your coffee mug on the top shelf, great. But right there, you're making muscles work. And people are like, I can do that. And yes, it isn't my 150 minutes per week, but I have to start somewhere. And so simple things really make a difference in fatigue. We don't know what causes fatigue, but I think life is fatiguing, right?
Yeah.
And then cancer just, pours it right on. So it makes a big difference for sure.
No, I think that that's so great. And I hope what the listeners are really taking away from this is, we're talking about wellness through cancer, but so much of what Sami's talking to us about is wellness through life. I mean, we used to get up, get dressed, those of us who were chronically late, run around and get dressed, balance getting our kids ready, breakfast, moving around, getting everything out the door, in the car, put the stuff in the trunk, drop off, go to work, climb stairs, go elevator. Like so much, you think, oh, if I have to take 10,000 steps a day, well, naturally you might have taken 5,000 steps a day.
Right.
And then middle of March struck, and now some people are lucky to take 1,000 steps a day. Everything is at your fingertips. You no longer have to pack your trunk. A lot of people are ordering groceries from Instacart. Like they're not even getting out and lifting the bags and moving everything. So it's like, really, when you think about the way our systems have been designed, you were saying 5 to 7 days of inactivity. Girl, we're coming to 5 to 7 months of inactivity.
Yeah,
and
I know.
It's a lot. I mean, it's a lot. So even you talking about cancer-related fatigue, I think just life-related fatigue in this moment, where you look at the treadmill or you look at your shoes by the front door and you are saying, I'm exhausted. Do I just want to sit in front of the TV? A lot of people are sitting in front of the TV. So it's definitely takeaways for people beyond people just going along their cancer journey. Sami, tell us about a patient or an experience that has had a significant impact, maybe beyond that first patient that kind of gave you the catalyst for what you're doing now.
Oh, I know. And I'm like, I saw that actually when I saw a couple of the questions, I was like, oh gosh, what? I have to say that I'm giving a recent example because it's kind of a fun one. I have this really good friend. She became a friend of mine because of cancer. So I tell people, like, cancer is not the best thing that ever happened to you, but me meeting you because you have cancer will change my life, right?
Yeah.
And I've met a lot of young lung cancer survivors who are living with advanced lung cancer as non-smokers. And we have one that just became a member of our gym. She became a really good friend. She sits our dog when we're gone. And, she's one of those people that when she was diagnosed, people gave her like a few months.
Yeah.
She's just with her diagnosis. And for whatever reason, she has a lot of things that have happened. Like she's had some major hospitalizations. She had a couple of major heart surgery related things, but she just is so stinking resilient. But the thing about her is she has resilience and she just doesn't give up. And it's one of those things that just in recent times, we actually took a beach trip out to North Carolina because she wanted to visit the beach and we just didn't know if we get to go. We flew and then we had to drive home like all night to get her back home. And she's like, I feel so bad. Like we had to do this. And I was like, but I wouldn't change it for any other thing, because the thing about it is I knew that we accomplished what we set out for, which was to get to that beach. And when there is a will, there is a way. We were in COVID. This was in July. So we were supposed to go to Florida. Florida went in lockdown. So we switched gears. And I remember thinking to myself when we finally got to the beach, which all came out in like 12 days, that we're standing there and there was the ocean. And it's like in that moment, you think this was worth everything. And so I think that people kind of think about, well, I'm going to plan my trip for later. I'm going to do this thing that I want to do later. I'm going to start exercising in 2 weeks from now. But it is about today.
Yeah.
And until you have that diagnosis or that scary time, we don't really worry about it as much. But here's somebody who literally is standing there going, I probably won't get back. And when we were driving home, we were thinking to ourselves, are we going to get back? Like, I was worried that we were going to not make the 18-hour trip home, and we did. And she's doing much, much better. But it literally puts it in perspective that I only have today. You only have the today. We're seeing this, like, so that's been even a good, and she's just a couple years younger than me. So those are the experiences. I think I'm a little more connected to the younger adults that are my age, that have the same, circumstances, because you think, wow, why them, not me?
Yeah.
And that'll change your perspective every day.
Yeah, absolutely. They give you so much, I don't know, it's like a gift. They give you so much perspective that is at their expense. But
Yeah.
you're getting the benefit because you get to share their experience with them. And I feel like so many times in my life with my experiences with patients who have passed on, it's like the memory of what their life stood for
Yep.
motivates you to do the next thing, no matter how you're feeling. You're tired, you're burned out, you're whatever. You're like, yeah, but there's people that aren't even here to try. So I just gotta
100%.
push through. And
No big
it
deal.
really does. It changes everything. I think you'll agree with me. There's nothing hard about working in cancer. People are always like, oh, it must be so hard. It's like, no, it's so lovely. It's wonderful.
It's so rewarding.
Yeah,
Sure.
it's so rewarding. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned in 2003 when you first encountered people that may need some interventions that were beyond clinical, that there was really no evidence, no data, no studies. Fast forward almost 20 years, and now there's a field called oncology exercise, like you're a specialist in it. Talk to me a little bit about the field, what training goes behind it, and what's really the main focus.
Yeah, there's some different variations of it, which is interesting. So I come from like the really frontline personal training exercise side of things, where I went to college and didn't know what I wanted to do with my life before there is an exercise cancer specialty. Now people are going into like more physical therapy type professions to get their basics, and then flipping more into the exercise. The only difference between physical therapy and exercise, what I do is I look lifelong. So there's rather than a 6-week or a recovery or whatever, we look lifestyle. They're in the college programs with the exercise physiology. Now people are getting cancer specialties. Interestingly, in the United States, what we do is not covered by insurance. So I know, but then exercise phys in like other parts of the country, like, Canada or the UK, is covered by insurance, but is a little bit more like their personal trainers. So it's a really interesting mix. Here's what I tell people. I could not tell you how to do what I did because I have no idea how to reduplicate my path. I happen to be in the right time at the right place. I'm a geek of knowledge. I love to learn. I'm on Twitter, like reading stuff, and I'm sitting by my husband or late night because I love to read. I would say this, that for somebody that wants to specialize, you've got to get some base certification, whether it's through an exercise or there's like even nutrition certifications or more mind body certifications, so you understand the language, so you can communicate with people, physicians and patients, because they're going to tell you that they have this drug and they're going to expect you to understand what the heck they're talking about. I don't know if we have where we need to be here in the States, because there's two challenges. So I work in the hospital, but we also own fitness. Those people don't normally speak together, but because I actually can go in the hospital facilities and talk to physicians, and I'm well known in the community, we've been able to bridge that gap. I don't think that's as strong everywhere, but I always tell people, if you believe in it, I guarantee there's professionals in your backyard, either on the clinical side that are interested or on the fitness side that are interested. Y'all just need to talk.
Yeah.
Because right now, because of so much cutbacks and funding on things like this, there's just not the access to programs that are funded anymore. There's just people like me that this is what we do, and we're going to live and breathe this every day that we're here.
Yeah. It's sad to think that so many things that complement cancer therapies, cancer clinical therapies, are uncovered. I mean, we did a podcast on breast health, and we had a patient who shared her story, and I'm in South Florida and she is in South Florida as well. Anyway, she was diagnosed, this is her second diagnosis with breast cancer, and she did a 6-week retreat, and everything, a retreat from electronics, a retreat from bad eating, a retreat from incorporating everything from, you know, standard exercise to things like meditation, relaxation techniques. A lot of psychology, just a lot of it. You know, what you were talking about with this wellness wheel, like who in your life is meaningful to you, who like pours positive things into you. And the retreat is like $12,000 or $15,000.
Yeah.
Not a penny is covered by insurance.
No.
But she emerged tolerating her meds better. She emerged like just on a completely different trajectory. And I think if insurance companies bothered to really dive into what matters holistically to a patient that is cost savings in the long run, programs like yours would be top on the list for reimbursement. So it always makes me sad that all of these kind of proven complementary therapies and programs don't get the coverage that they really deserve.
I will say this though, you know, in the last 6 months, as we were working with one of our biggest hospital clients, we had to really pull data, and we really looked at length of stay in the hospital and ER visits and ER admissions. And I knew if we ran the data right, we would show benefit, and we did. And then now that, like, I think the thing that we need to remember is we have to speak people's language. So if we're going to work in the hospitals, what matters to hospitals? Readmissions, length of stay, ER visits. Not right or wrong. That's just how they are. And so that's how they think. And so once we started talking about those pieces, like, they were like, well, of course it makes patients feel better. That's great. But once we talk to their language, they listen more. With payers, you know, they're looking for ways to care manage their patients, or I'm sorry, like usually their members, that don't cost them as much money. So if we've started to be able to work with some payers and show them that, we just have to remember that just because I think, you know, this type of exercise is the best, you and I may think differently, and that's okay. Somebody may love yoga. Yoga not really my jam, but I do it once in a while because, you know, once in a while. But I think that's the way to think about it, is that we got to still speak their language.
Yeah.
That's the way of the world. That's our business world.
Absolutely. And, you know, it's ironic. My mom is 73, and when she went on Medicare, she got all of these memberships. She could go to the gym free. She could do this.
Yeah.
Free, she could do whatever. And I'm like, that's a little backward. Like, why aren't we doing that when we are first insured, so that we're motivating people to have a long lasting life of health, instead of waiting till retirement age, and then we're giving all these people.
I know.
So it's interesting, but you're right. I mean, everything's got to be data focused, and we've got to speak their language, and we've got to show financial returns. I mean, insurance companies are money-making entities, so we've got to show kind of financial returns. So, you know, as much as we can do to help educate the audience on this, you know, we're happy to stand in, because it's definitely a worthy cause. So before I ask you the last question that I have, I want to talk to you about how can people access you, or programs like you? Like, what would if I'm diagnosed with cancer, or maybe I'm just diagnosed with a chronic illness, what am I Googling? How am I reaching you?
I would tell people you've got to Google cancer exercise for sure. There are a couple of organizations. The American College of Sports Medicine is where most people with qualifications, you have to have enough education and training to even sit for their cancer certification. So there are people that are just kind of starting, but there are people that are starting that are good. So I don't necessarily say that, you know, that's all bad. I personally think that if you're diagnosed with cancer, you want to look for someone that you're not their guinea pig. I know Kim was my guinea pig 17 years ago, but I guarantee I'm way better now, you know, than then. And there's just more resources. Through our gym program, for people that want to participate in our programming out of Kansas City, we're launching our just live programming, and so people can access it from anywhere. And the reason we're doing that is during quarantine, we moved all of our gym classes online, and we did it. And then we realized that we kind of had to keep doing that. So we went back to group classes. But here's the thing, going back to your sort of feel like it, there is science behind when you work out with other people and create endorphins with other people, you create a bond. And so one of the things about cancer, chronic illness, life trauma, whether that's, losing a baby at a young age or even a spouse or whatever trauma, people look for support groups. Well, when you have a support group that you create endorphins, sitting next to people with the same kind of similar characteristics, you'll create a lifelong bond. That's just how the brain is hardwired. Well, we do it through exercise and function and sort of sharing this wellness lifestyle. And what we've realized is that's what's going to sort of propel things forward. And we can do that online now versus before we felt like, well, we kind of always have to do this in person. So we do have a lot of people. We've got a client as far away as Hong Kong, which is an interesting time difference. And one of our coaches coaches him, and it's night and day, but so we do a lot of remote stuff. It's from a hospital and a healthcare side of things, the Cancer Wellness for Life. So my email is just Sami, my first name, SAMI, at cancerwellnessforlife.com. And I'm always open to not only sharing information as a client consulting, but I'm a believer that if there's 1,000 more of me, we can do more. So I'm always happy to talk to anybody and just share whatever knowledge I can.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you so much. And we'll make sure too that we make all your information available on all of the collateral that we have for the podcast. Sami, what's something you want everybody in their cancer journey, and maybe I'd make that even a little bit more broad, everybody right now kind of in the moment listening to us, for whatever reason they're encountering this moment with us, what do you want them to know?
I think that you only have today. And I think that, we just have got to quit putting off things for tomorrow. Of course, I'm an expert. Like I said, I'm an exercise person. I'd be like, get off your butt, let's go. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think that sometimes it's easier said than done, right? But I always think that if there's anything we can learn about 2020 is there are no guarantees of what tomorrow, next year is going to look like. But what can you do today? My husband has this really great thing, like he calls everything gravity. Like you have to know when something is gravity. And I always was like, what's gravity? And he said, Sami, gravity is the thing you cannot control. Like we are literally planted to this earth because of gravity. So sometimes when I look out the window and I see people not wearing masks, or like I'm frustrated watching the news or hearing about COVID cases, or someone died from a diagnosis that like, I'm just shocked that they even have, right? They're the ones that did everything right. I realize sometimes it's gravity. So what I've learned so I can keep moving forward, keep doing what I do, is sometimes I have what I call the gravity bucket. It goes in and I let it be. And then I have a little bit more room in my day and my life and my emotional capacity to go do something else. And I think resiliency is also just remaining optimistic. Like I believe our world's going to get better. I just do. Yeah. And sometimes I have to take something I listen to and be like, that's in the gravity bucket, but we really only have today, or maybe that's going to be tomorrow. But when you wake up tomorrow, think, okay, this is going to be a good day. I'm awake. Some people don't wake up.
I know. Some people don't. And for a lot of reasons, sometimes it's hard to break that cycle. But, listen, it goes back to those wellness categories. Surround yourself with people who don't let you stay stuck there. Like 100%. That call you up and say, come on, let's go. We're going for a walk. Put on your mask. We'll stand 8 feet apart. We'll just shout at each other as we walk around.
Yeah.
Where we'll just, sit together or whatever. It's like all of those needs have to be met one way or another. And if you're not filling it with positive things, that negative gravity will get in there and just, nest. And so a big part of everything that we've talked about tonight is how do you control what's nesting in those pockets? And I think that that's something that all of us need to hear and need to be aware of. So I so appreciate the time you've given. Well, I always end my podcasts asking silly questions. And the other night someone asked me, how do you like write all of these down? And I said, actually, from like minute 45, I start building anxiety. I have no idea what I'm going to be asking.
Oh, no.
And so I listening to you, I have kind of a two-part question for you. When I was really young, probably, I don't know, 5 or 6, my little one's 6 now, so I was probably his age. My parents used to buy us like a box of candy, whatever kind of candy it was, and there's 4 of us. So they would cut all 4, and I'm the oldest. They would cut all 4, make it so that it's even. And then they would give it to me to distribute to my brothers and my sister. Girl, I always took a tax from the oldest tax so that I would have the lion's share of it. And then I would kind of like hide it away and have it for me. So my two-part question is, a guilty indulgence, what does Sami Mansfield take the tax and keep it? And remember, your husband's going to be listening, so he'll be like, oh, that's where that.
Oh, he totally knows. That's the funny part. Yeah.
And then the second part to that question is, when you want to overindulge, what's your go-to that's on the healthy side?
Okay, so my first one you're going to laugh at. So my husband loves anything peanut butter, but like I don't do legumes well because they just don't work with my stomach. So I buy almond butter, which is more expensive and it's healthier because I'm going to make him something with it. But I usually don't. Although I did make cookies last night, right? So they're in the fridge and I've only had 2, which is pretty good. But what I do is I stash the jar where I know he's not going to see it. And then I just eat it all myself. And then I hide it in the top bottom of I just like tuck it under something in the trash. I mean, I totally do it. He knows I do it. Like, cause he does, like, he helps unload the groceries, but he just sort of rolls his eyes at me and off he goes. But like, sometimes when I think I'm going to be better, I'll buy peanut butter because I really shouldn't eat peanut butter, but he loves peanut butter. But anyway, yeah, that's totally my sneaky.
Okay.
As well. Yeah, totally. But I have a creative, like, one of my indulgences, if I'm going to go healthy, I am like, I think the best accessible invention of healthy that you can do anything with is Greek yogurt. And so like I have like, I'll take, cocoa powder and monk fruit sugar and add like chia seed and fruit, and I want to be super healthy and it feels like a dessert, or I'll add like cut up things of chocolate or peanut butter cups or whatever, I have like a granola or something if I want to be, like I'm not trying to watch my calories, but like I think Greek yogurt is the best invention ever.
Well, that's so cool. And do you do that? Is it because it like satiates? Like, what is it about the yogurt that can balance the peanut butter cups or whatever it is, or is it just a filler?
It's like the vessel, and I feel like it is healthy. So like it's funny because I had to convince him. He was a big like love sour cream. And I quit buying sour cream. Like I just quit and started buying Greek yogurt. But what I used to do is take the Greek yogurt and put it in a container and put it out like on the kitchen table or the island when we'd have like taco fajita. And finally he was like, where's the sour cream? I'm like, that's Greek yogurt. He's like, what? No, And so now he knows.
Right.
So, you can add sriracha. So I tell my patients, you want to make a healthy dip, take like ranch powder, like where you're going to make ranch dressing. Yeah. And just add it to Greek yogurt and dip vegetables in it, and you're getting healthy protein.
Okay. So we got
so you could just do all of these things. People like, it's sour. I'm like, well, add honey. Get over it. It's all good. And it's inexpensive. It's super good in protein. You can like make it savory. You can make it sweet. You can mix it with eggs and make like a frittata. I think Greek yogurt is the best invention ever.
I love it.
Somebody wants to sponsor me. Yeah.
I love that you put a little vessel because that's kind of real. Whatever you want, you can add to it. So that's actually super great. So I'll put it on my Instacart list. Greek yogurt.
You have to do like a 30-day challenge of a new Greek yogurt every day. Like you'll have to put that for everybody on the Facebook page. Everyone has to comment. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Sami, thank you so much for being here tonight. The work that you do is so meaningful for so many people. I know, as people walk through the journey with illness, there are so many uncontrollables. People are telling you who to see, where to go, where to be, and there's so many toxic things that we're given that just become part of our life. I know every Friday I have to inject myself with a biologic, and I every time just like say a prayer, Lord, let it be helping me more than it's hurting me, because it is a balance. Chemotherapy, radiation, it's like it's helping but it's hurting. And so someone like you comes in and helps us restore the things that at least we can control. And, you know, the things that help us focus on being well. And well is way more than just, you know, how you physically feel from day to day. It's all of the things that we've talked about. So I want to thank you for your life's work and your passion, and for all the patients that you serve. And I love in so many ways that COVID has made the world smaller so that people in Hong Kong can be part of your program.
I know, it's so cool.
So it's super cool, and I wish you great luck. As much as we can do to help promote everything you're doing, please let us know. And it was great to get to, I think this is one of the moments in kind of the cancer wellness journey where if we both weren't doing what we were doing, we never would have met each other. So I'm grateful for the walk that we're on together, and I look forward to working with you a lot more in the future.
Likewise. Thanks so much for having me. It's been so much fun.
Wonderful. All right, Sami, and congratulations on your son being in college.
Yay!
All right, have a wonderful evening.
You too. Thanks.